The phone screen glowed 3:17 a.m. when my thumb hovered over his name. I'd cleaned Dominic Caruso's suite every Wednesday for 8 months, knew how he took his coffee, knew the scar that ran down his left shoulder blade, knew the Glock he kept in the nightstand drawer, safety always off. What I didn't know was his phone number. Until tonight. Until I found it scribbled on the hotel stationery in his desk drawer while searching for something, anything, that might save his life. My hands shook so badly the phone nearly slipped from my grip. Outside the supply closet where I'd barricaded myself, I could hear them. 3 men, maybe 4, speaking in low voices that carried the particular cadence of people who killed for money. They were setting up in the penthouse suite, Dominic's suite, the one he'd returned to in less than 2 hours. I pressed call before I could change my mind. It rang once, twice. "Who is this?" His voice was rough with sleep and something darker. Suspicion, maybe. Or the instinct that told dangerous men when danger was coming for them. "Mr. Caruso." My whisper came out fractured, desperate. "It's Elena. Elena Morales. I clean your suite at the Belmont." Silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, "I know who you are." 3 words that shouldn't have made my stomach flip. 3 words that meant he'd noticed me when I'd spent 8 months perfecting invisibility. "They're coming for you tonight," I said, the words tumbling out fast and jagged. "There are men in your suite right now. They're armed. They're waiting for you." "How many?" Not who are they or are you sure, just cold calculation. How many threats? How much force required? 3 that I've seen. Maybe more. "Where are you?" "Supply closet. 3rd floor. They don't know I'm here." "Stay there." Command, absolute and final. "Don't move. Don't make a sound. I'm 10 minutes out." "Mr. Caruso." "Dominic." His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the distance and danger. "If you're going to save my life, you should probably use my first name." The line went dead. I sat in the darkness between industrial mops and boxes of miniature shampoos, counting my heartbeats like prayer beads. Each one felt stolen, temporary, the kind of thing that could stop at any moment if those men discovered me. 8 months ago, I'd taken this job because the Belmont paid $3 more per hour than the Holiday Inn, because my mother's dialysis treatments cost $1,800 every week, because my little sister needed books for her nursing classes and I was the only one left to provide them. I'd learned to move through the luxury suites like air, present but unnoticed. Wealthy guests didn't see housekeepers. We were furniture with pulses, convenient, invisible, completely beneath their concern. Dominic Caruso had been different from the first day. He'd said good morning, asked my name, noticed when I'd reorganized his desk and left a note asking if the new arrangement worked better. The note had been in Italian, a language I'd learned from my grandmother but rarely used. His response, also in Italian, had simply said, "Much better." "Thank you, Elena." Small things. Meaningless, probably. But after years of invisibility, being seen felt like sunlight after winter. Now I was crouched in a supply closet at 3 in the morning, having just warned a man I barely knew, a man whose world operated by rules I didn't understand, that someone wanted him dead. The smart thing would have been to clock out early. Pretend I'd seen nothing. Let whatever was going to happen just happen. But I'd thought about my father. How he'd died alone in a hospital bed because no one had warned him the wiring in his shop was faulty. How I'd arrived 10 minutes after the fire took him. 10 minutes that might have made the difference between loss and survival. I couldn't let that happen again. Not when I could prevent it. Footsteps in the hallway outside made me freeze. Heavy. Deliberate. The footsteps of men who didn't care about making noise because they didn't fear interruption. Check the third floor again, a voice said in accented English. Make sure housekeeping's gone home. Building's empty. I swept it twice. Sweep it again. Caruso doesn't survive tonight because we got sloppy. Their footsteps moved away, but my pulse continued hammering against my ribs like something trying to escape. 7 minutes since Dominic's call. 3 more until he arrived. If he arrived, if this wasn't all some elaborate setup I was too naive to recognize. I thought about the first time I'd seen him, emerging from the elevator in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian to someone who'd clearly disappointed him. His dark hair had been slightly disheveled, his jaw tight with controlled fury. Everything about him had screamed power, danger, the kind of man who made problems disappear with a phone call. Later, I'd overheard the concierge mention his name to a colleague, Dominic Caruso, the Caruso family. Real estate development, they'd said, but their nervous glances suggested the reality was far more complicated. I wasn't stupid. I knew what real estate development meant in Chicago. Knew the Belmont catered to a particular clientele, the kind who paid cash, refused housekeeping on certain days, and sometimes had bodyguards stationed outside their doors. But Dominic had always been different with me, polite, almost kind. Like maybe beneath the expensive suits and cold calculation, there was something human worth protecting. Or maybe I was just a lonely housekeeper projecting meaning onto small courtesies because I wanted to matter to someone who seemed to matter in the world. A door slammed somewhere above me, shouting in Italian, sharp and urgent. Then gunfire. 3 shots. Rapid succession, the sound muffled by walls and distance but unmistakable. I pressed my fist against my mouth to keep from crying out. More shouting. Running footsteps. Another shot. Then silence. The kind of silence that felt like the world holding its breath. I counted to 60. Then 60 again. My phone showed 3:31 a.m. and I was still alive, still hidden, still waiting for either salvation or discovery. The supply closet door opened. I bit down on my knuckle hard enough to taste blood, certain this was it. They'd found me, and whatever happened next would be quick and final. But the man silhouetted in the doorway wasn't one of the assassins. Dominic Caruso stood there in dark tactical gear, a gun in one hand, his other hand extended toward me. His face was spattered with blood that wasn't his dark eyes fever bright with adrenaline. Elena. Not a question, a statement, like he'd known exactly where to find me. Come with me, now. I took his hand because what else was there to do? His grip was iron strong, pulling me out of the closet and into the hallway where 2 bodies lay motionless. I tried not to look at their faces. Failed. Don't, Dominic said, positioning his body between me and the carnage. Keep your eyes on me. We moved fast down the service stairs, his gun trained ahead, his other hand never releasing mine. The Belmont blurred around us, corridors I'd walked 1,000 times now feeling foreign and threatening. Outside, a black SUV waited, engine running, rear door open. Dominic pushed me inside first, then followed, slamming the door as the vehicle lurched into motion. Drive, he barked in Italian to whoever sat behind the wheel. Then to me, are you hurt? I shook my head, not trusting my voice. He holstered his weapon and reached for my face, tilting it toward the dim interior light. His fingers were surprisingly gentle, checking for injuries with clinical efficiency. You're in shock, he said, more to himself than me. That's normal. Your body will catch up in a few minutes. When it does, you'll probably cry or vomit or both. Don't fight it. I'm fine, I managed. You're not fine. You just watched me kill 2 men. Fine would be concerning. The casual way he acknowledged it, not defended, not apologized, just stated as fact, sent ice through my veins. This was his world. Violence as transaction, death as problem solving. Who were they? I asked. The Battaglia family, my uncle's people. His jaw clenched. Antonio thinks the family business should have gone to him when my father died. He's been making moves, testing boundaries. Tonight was supposed to be his checkmate. Your uncle tried to kill you? Welcome to my world, Elena. His smile was bitter. Family dinners are particularly tense. The SUV sped through Chicago's empty streets, heading toward the lakefront where towers of glass and steel scraped the pre-dawn sky. My mind struggled to process what had happened, what I'd done. I'd saved Dominic Caruso's life, and in doing so, I'd stepped into a world I'd only glimpsed from the margins. A world where uncles ordered their nephews killed, where men carried guns like business cards, where phone calls at 3 a.m. could mean the difference between survival and a body bag. Why did you call me? Dominic asked suddenly. You could have let it happen, walked away. You owe me nothing. I thought about my father's funeral, the emptiness of knowing I'd been too late, the weight of preventable loss. I don't let people die when I can save them, I said quietly, even if they're probably criminals. Probably? His eyebrow lifted. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. That's generous. He leaned back against the seat, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Most people wouldn't have gotten involved. Self-preservation usually wins over conscience. Then I guess I'm not most people. No. Something shifted in his expression, calculation giving way to something warmer, more complicated. You're really not. The SUV pulled into an underground garage beneath a building I recognized, the Caruso Tower. 43 stories of luxury condominiums that had gone up 2 years ago, transforming a blighted waterfront block into prime real estate. Real estate development. Right. We took a private elevator to the top floor. The penthouse was exactly what I'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Furniture that looked like modern art. Surfaces so pristine they seemed to repel the concept of dust. Sit, Dominic ordered, gesturing to a leather sofa that probably cost more than my annual salary. I'll get you something to drink. I should go home? My shift. Your shift is over. The Belmont is a crime scene. You're not going anywhere near it. He moved to a bar cart, poured amber liquid into crystal glasses. And home isn't safe. If Antonio's people saw you, they'll know you warned me. The reality of that settled over me like concrete. I'd thought about saving Dominic's life. Hadn't considered what that would cost me. How long? I asked as he handed me the glass. How long what? How long until it's safe to go home? He was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I don't know. Could be days. Could be weeks. Depends how quickly I can neutralize the threat. Neutralize. The clinical term for murder. You mean kill your uncle. I mean protect what's mine. His dark eyes held no apology. Antonio chose this. He came for me on my territory, targeting me in a place I should have been safe. That kind of disrespect demands a response. And what happens to me while you're busy responding? You stay here. Under my protection. He sat beside me, not too close, but near enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker. I have people who can get your mother to her dialysis appointments. Your sister can move into one of my buildings. Better security. Whatever you need to feel safe, I'll provide. The offer should have sounded generous. Instead, it sounded like a cage. I don't want to be anyone's responsibility, I said. Too late. You became my responsibility the moment you dialed my number. His voice dropped lower. Elena, you saved my life. In my world, that creates a debt. I take my debts seriously. I don't want you to owe me anything. Then what do you want? The question hung between us, weighted with implications I wasn't ready to examine. What did I want? To go back to before 3 a.m., when my life was simple and contained, to unsee the bodies in the hallway, to forget how Dominic's hand had felt in mine, strong and certain, like an anchor in chaos. I want to understand, I said finally. Why me? You have security. People train for this. Why do I matter? He was quiet so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because you called. Not security, not my men, not even emergency services. You called me directly. His gaze held mine. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Someone choosing to warn me instead of using my potential death for their own gain? That's depressing. That's my reality. He set down his untouched drink. I'm surrounded by people who want things from me. Power, money, protection, access. Everyone has an angle. Everyone's calculating how to benefit from my position. And I'm different because I want nothing? You're different because when you had information someone would have paid a fortune for, you gave it to me freely. No conditions, no negotiations. Just, they're coming for you tonight. He smiled, and it transformed his face into something almost human. That kind of purity doesn't exist in my world, Elena. It's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. I'm voting stupid, I muttered. I'm voting brave. We sat in silence as dawn began breaking over the lake, painting the water in shades of blood and gold. My body was finally catching up to what had happened, the adrenaline crash leaving me hollow and shaking. Dominic noticed. Of course he noticed. His world required reading people the way mine required reading cleaning schedules. He stood, shrugged off his tactical jacket, and draped it over my shoulders. It was still warm from his body, and smelled like gunpowder and him. Guest room is down the hall, he said. Everything you need should be there. Sleep. We'll figure out the rest later. What about you? I have calls to make. People to eliminate from the equation. He caught my expression. Metaphorically eliminate. Mostly. I should have been horrified. Should have run for that guest room and locked the door. Should have demanded he take me home, or to a police station, or literally anywhere else. Instead, I asked, do you need help? His eyebrows rose. Help eliminating my enemies? Help not being alone while you do it. For a moment, his mask slipped completely. I saw exhaustion in his eyes, loneliness. The particular isolation of someone who'd built walls so high that even allies couldn't reach him. I'm always alone, he said quietly. That's the job. Not tonight. I settled deeper into his jacket, claiming space I had no right to claim. Tonight, you have company, even if she's just a housekeeper who doesn't know when to mind her own business. Elena, I'm not leaving, Dominic. You're stuck with me until this is over. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or the beginning of something more dangerous. He studied me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve, a variable that didn't fit his carefully controlled equations. Finally, he nodded once. Then stay. But understand what you're choosing. This world doesn't let people leave easily. You step into it. You become part of it. I know. I didn't know. Not really. Couldn't comprehend what I was agreeing to, but sitting there in his jacket, watching dawn break over a city full of people who wanted him dead, I made my choice. I chose the danger, the complication, the impossible pull toward a man who commanded violence like other people commanded conference rooms. I chose Dominic Caruso, and he, whether he realized it yet or not, chose me back. The next 48 hours existed in a strange, suspended reality. Dominic's penthouse became both sanctuary and prison, beautiful, comfortable, and absolutely inescapable. He'd meant what he said about protection. Within hours, my mother had been moved to a private dialysis clinic with security that looked like Secret Service. My sister found herself relocated to a furnished apartment in one of Dominic's buildings, her nursing school tuition mysteriously paid in full. When I'd protested, he'd simply said, "I protect what's mine." The possessiveness in those words should have terrified me. Instead, they made something warm unfurl in my chest. Dominic worked from home. If work meant conducting a war via encrypted phone calls and video conferences held in Italian so rapid I could only catch fragments. His men came and went through the private elevator, never speaking to me, but their eyes always tracked my movements with wary assessment. The enemy's pet, I imagined them thinking. The housekeeper who'd gotten too close. On the second night, I found Dominic on the terrace at 2 a.m., smoking a cigarette and staring at the lake like it held answers. "I didn't know you smoked," I said, joining him. "I don't. Except when I'm planning how to kill family members." He offered me the cigarette. Bad habit. One of many. I took it, even though I'd quit 3 years ago. The nicotine hit my system like nostalgia and poison combined. "How's the planning going?" I asked. "Complicated. Antonio has more support than I anticipated. Some of the capos think I'm too young, too soft, that my father coddled me." He laughed, bitter and sharp. "They'll learn differently soon enough." "What happens when they do?" "They'll die or they'll bend the knee. There's no middle ground in succession wars." He said it so casually, like discussing weather rather than murder. I passed the cigarette back, our fingers brushing in the exchange. "Does it bother you?" I asked. "Killing people you've known your whole life?" "It bothers me that they chose this." His jaw clenched. I didn't want this war. Didn't want to prove myself through blood. But Antonio forced my hand. So now I finish what he started. "And after? When it's over?" "After?" He trailed off, staring at the glowing end of the cigarette. "After, I'll still be exactly what I've always been. Dangerous. Isolated. Surrounded by people who fear me more than they respect me." "I don't fear you." His eyes snapped to mine, dark and intense. "You should." "I know." I moved closer until we were sharing the same cold air, the same impossible moment. "But I don't." "Why not?" "Because you haven't given me reason to. You could have disappeared me, made sure I never talked about what I saw. Instead, you protected my family, gave me a guest room with a lock on the inside, respected boundaries you had no obligation to respect." I held his gaze. "Monsters don't do that, Dominic. You don't know what I've done. I know what you've done for me. That's enough." We stood in charged silence, the city sprawling below us like a kingdom of light and shadow. Dominic's world, brutal and complicated, but also somehow mine now, too. He stubbed out the cigarette with deliberate care. "Elena, when this is over, when Antonio is dead and the family is secure, you can leave. I'll set you up somewhere safe. New city, new identity, enough money that you never have to clean another hotel room." "And if I don't want to leave?" The question seemed to startle him. "Why would you stay?" "Maybe I'm tired of being invisible. Maybe I want to matter to someone who actually sees me." I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. "Maybe I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Despite every logical reason not to." His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek with devastating gentleness. "You don't know what you're choosing. Then show me." The kiss happened like inevitability, his mouth claiming mine with controlled intensity, one hand cupping my jaw while the other pulled me flush against him. I tasted smoke and desperation and something darker. Need, maybe, or the loneliness of a man who'd convinced himself he'd always be alone. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "This is a mistake," he whispered. "Probably. You'll regret it. Possibly. I can't promise safety. Can't promise normal. Can't promise anything except that staying with me means living in constant danger." "I know. And you're staying anyway?" I thought about the supply closet, the terror and adrenaline, the moment I'd chosen to dial his number instead of hiding until morning. I'd already chosen him then. Everything since had just been confirmation. "I'm staying anyway," I confirmed. His smile was slow and dangerous and entirely human. "Then come inside. It's cold out here, and I'm done pretending I don't want you in my bed." The bedroom was as minimalist as the rest of the penthouse. King bed with black sheets, floor-to-ceiling windows, security panel by the door that probably controlled measures I didn't want to know about. Dominic locked the door with careful precision, then turned to face me. In the low light, he looked younger, less composed. Like maybe beneath the crime-lord exterior lived a man who was as uncertain as I was. "Last chance," he said. "Walk out now, and nothing changes. We keep our distance. You stay the woman who saved my life, and I stay the man you barely know." "I don't want distance." "What do you want?" "You. This. Everything you warned me away from." He crossed the room in 3 strides, and then we were falling onto the bed in a tangle of limbs and shared breath. His hands mapped my body with reverent intensity, learning curves and scars and the particular geography of me. I did the same, tracing the bullet wound on his left shoulder, the knife scar across his ribs, the physical history of a violent life. Each mark was a story he didn't need to tell. I understood them just by touch. When he finally moved over me, positioning himself with careful attention, he paused. "Elena," he said, my name a question and a promise. "You're sure?" I pulled him down, answering with my body what words couldn't capture. "Yes. Always. Yes." From the moment I'd called him in that supply closet, some part of me had known this was inevitable. We moved together slowly, building heat that had nothing to do with desperation and everything to do with recognition. Like our souls had been waiting to find each other in exactly this moment, broken and dangerous and somehow perfect. Afterward, wrapped in expensive sheets with his arm heavy across my waist, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. Seen. Like I mattered in a way that transcended utility or obligation. "Stay," Dominic murmured against my hair. Not a command, a plea. "I'm not going anywhere." "Good." His arm tightened. "Because I don't think I could let you go now even if I wanted to." Outside, the city hummed with ordinary life, people sleeping, working, existing in worlds far removed from the one I'd just entered. They'd wake to coffee and commutes and concerns that felt impossibly distant. I'd wake to this. A mafia boss holding me like I was precious, a war brewing in the shadows, and a choice I'd made that would define everything that came next. The smart thing would be to run, to accept his offer of relocation and disappear into safety. But I'd never been particularly smart when it came to self-preservation. And lying there in Dominic Caruso's arms, listening to his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, I realized I didn't want safety. I wanted this. Complicated, dangerous, impossible as it was. I wanted him. 3 days later, the war ended in a restaurant bathroom on the south side. Antonio Caruso had been hiding in plain sight, protected by soldiers who thought his claim to the family business was legitimate. Dominic's intelligence network, A spiderweb of informants and surveillance that would have impressed any intelligence agency finally pinpointed his location. "I'm going alone," Dominic said, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. "Like hell you are." I'd spent 3 days watching him plan, listening to strategy sessions, learning the language of violence he spoke fluently. I wasn't about to be sidelined now. "Elena, this isn't—" "I'm coming. You need someone watching your back." His jaw clenched. "You're not trained for this." I wasn't trained to save your life at 3 a.m. either, but I managed. I crossed my arms. "I'm coming, Dominic. Accept it or waste time arguing." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. A real laugh, warm and genuine. "You're insane." I learned from the best. He handed me a small pistol from his personal collection. "Safety's here. Point and shoot. Don't hesitate if someone threatens you." My hand trembled slightly as I took the weapon, but I forced myself to grip it firmly. This was my choice. My world now. The restaurant was a dive on 63rd Street, the kind of place that served cash-only meals and asked no questions. Antonio sat in a back booth, surrounded by 3 bodyguards who looked competent enough to be concerning. Dominic walked in like he owned the place, which, technically, he did. I'd learned he owned half the businesses on this block. "Uncle Antonio," he said, voice carrying across the mostly empty restaurant. "We need to talk." Antonio looked up, and the family resemblance was striking. Same dark eyes, same sharp features. But where Dominic's face held controlled intensity, Antonio's held only hunger. "Nephew," Antonio replied in Italian, "you're either very brave or very stupid to come here." "I'm done playing." Dominic's hand rested casually near his weapon. "You tried to kill me. Failed. Now you hide behind soldiers you can't afford to pay, in my territory, eating my food. It's embarrassing. This territory should have been mine. Your father promised." "My father's promises died with him. I inherited the family. You inherited nothing." Dominic's voice went cold. "Last chance, Antonio. Walk away. Retire to Sicily. Live out your days in peace." "Or what? You'll kill family?" Antonio laughed. "You don't have it in you. You're soft, just like your father said." The insult hung in the air like poison. Then Dominic moved. One shot, clean and precise, directly through Antonio's heart. The bodyguards reached for weapons, but Dominic's men, positioned strategically throughout the restaurant, moved faster. 3 shots, 3 bodies. It was over in seconds. Dominic stood over his uncle's body, expression carved from ice. No remorse, no hesitation, just cold execution of necessary violence. "It's done," he said to no one in particular. Then, to me, "Let's go home." Home. The word settled over me like a promise. We left through the kitchen, past cooks who'd seen nothing and would remember less. In the car, Dominic's hand found mine, gripped tight enough to hurt. "You okay?" I asked. "I just killed my father's brother." "I know. Does it bother you, watching me do that?" I thought about it honestly. Should have bothered me. Should have sent me running. Should have been the final proof that this world wasn't mine. But Antonio had tried to murder Dominic. Had threatened everything I'd somehow come to care about in less than a week. "No," I said finally. "It doesn't bother me. He chose this. You just finished it." Dominic's eyes met mine, searching for judgment and finding only acceptance. Something in his expression cracked, the mask he wore slipping enough to reveal the man underneath. "I don't deserve you," he said quietly. "Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway." His laugh was broken, relieved. Lucky me. The aftermath took weeks to settle. The family absorbed Antonio's death with pragmatic acceptance. Succession wars ended in blood more often than negotiations. Dominic's position solidified. His youth no longer a liability once people realized he'd execute his own uncle without hesitation. I moved out of the guest room and into his bedroom. Not because he'd demanded it, but because neither of us could sleep apart anymore. We'd become addicted to the particular intimacy of shared space. His arm around my waist, my face buried in his chest, the steady rhythm of his breathing counting us through the darkness. My mother's dialysis continued at the private clinic. My sister graduated nursing school with honors, already accepting a position at Northwestern Memorial. They knew Dominic had helped them, but I'd kept the details vague. Some truths were too complicated to explain. 6 months after the night I'd called him from that supply closet, Dominic proposed. Not in some grand gesture with roses and champagne. Just us. On his terrace at 3 a.m., the anniversary of when everything had changed. "Marry me," he said, no preamble or pretty speeches. Not because I own you or need to claim you, but because I want to wake up every morning for the rest of my life knowing you chose me. I thought about all the reasons I should say no. The danger, the violence, the world I'd stepped into that would never let me go. Then I thought about his hand in mine during chaos, the way he looked at me like I was the only real thing in his carefully constructed empire. How he'd protected my family without asking for anything in return. "Yes," I said, "on one condition." "Name it." "We get married at the Belmont, the hotel where all this started." His smile was pure happiness. "That can be arranged. I own it." "Of course you do." The wedding was small. His inner circle and my tiny family, held in the Belmont's penthouse suite where everything had begun, where I'd called him at 3 a.m. and changed both our lives forever. Dominic wore black, sharp, and devastating. I wore white, which felt ironic given the blood on both our hands by now. Metaphorical for me, literal for him. When the priest, who definitely had mob connections, asked if I took this man, I thought about the supply closet, the terror and adrenaline, the moment I'd chosen to save him instead of hiding. "I do," I said, and meant it with every fractured piece of my soul. "I do," he echoed, sliding a ring onto my finger. Diamonds that probably cost more than my childhood home. We kissed while his world, our world now, erupted in controlled celebration. Afterward, in the quiet of his penthouse high above the city, Dominic pulled me close. "Any regrets?" he asked. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, invisible, exhausted, trapped in a life of survival rather than living. Thought about the woman I'd become, seen, protected, loved by a man who commanded empires. "Not one," I said honestly. "Good." He kissed the top of my head. "Because you're stuck with me now. For better or worse, in gunfire and peace, till death do us part. Or until one of your enemies does. That too." We stood at the windows, watching dawn break over Chicago. The city sprawled below us, his kingdom, my chosen home. Dangerous and beautiful and ours. Somewhere out there, new threats were probably already forming. New wars waiting to be fought. New betrayals incubating in the shadows. But for now, in this moment, we were just us. A mafia boss and the housekeeper who'd called him at 3 a.m. The danger and the salvation, the monster and the woman who'd chosen him anyway. And somehow, impossibly, we were enough. Thanks for watching to the end of this story. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel for more stories like this. See you in the next one.